Okay, so greetings everyone who joined. Now we'll continue from where we left off yesterday.
Yep. Okay, so I will just share my screen and we'll start. Good evening, everyone. So I believe most of you were in the yesterday's sessions. So basically, I started with the basics of Docker yesterday. Um, my ultimate objective here is to teach you a little bit about Kubernetes, and it cannot happen without teaching you about containers. So we did that yesterday. We learned Docker basics and more commands yesterday. Hope you did learn those commands. You did try it at your laptop on your laptop. So if you have any doubts, like if you encountered any problems, you can maybe after the session also you can just reach me on LinkedIn or anywhere, or you can just mail me. Right. So let's start. So if there is someone new to this session, it's just a brief about me. So my name is Vishnu. I am lead engineer of OpsView at ArtFox LLC Dubai, and I'm also certified CK, CKD, AWS, and Red Hat, Python Golang developer, and a multi-cloud engineer. And you can reach me at the right I am Vishnu Case on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, everywhere. So yeah, let's do a quick recap on what we discussed yesterday. We discussed how we used to deploy applications on virtual machines and how we are doing deployment, application deployment on containers, right? So here is how it look like on virtual machines. It will have a like for each virtual machine application deployment, it will have a guest OS and application dependencies, then the application file. So it's going to take up this guest OS. The size of the guest OS, if you look at, it is much larger than bin and libs or applications. So basically, the storage, the RAM, or the computational resources which is going to taken by the OS guest OS itself will be much larger than the application uh, is going to consume, right? And if we look at container, we have host operating system and the container runtime. There is no guest OS, only the application dependencies and application files, right? So in that way, it is more lightweight. In container, it is just process isolation, but in virtual machine, it is entirely like a different OS inside. The application will be running inside a different OS itself. So it's gonna take a lot of space, as it is just a process isolation in Docker, process isolation in containers. It is gonna take very much, like very less amount of resources with perspective to storage, RAM, and CPU. So that is containers based virtual machines. So yeah, this we already discussed just now. Then traditional virtualized environment. Yeah. So there will be a basic hardware. It can be a rack, or it can be a normal server, or even it can be your laptop. And host OS will be there, Windows or Linux, CentOS for any host OS. Then hypervisor, any virtualization technology. And on top of that, we will be building virtual machine. So in each virtual machine, there will be a different OS that I haven't put it over here. I just instead that I just keep application over here. So if you look at, I have deployed it resembles it depict two application deployed onto this virtual machine and two application deployed onto this virtual machine. So if you look at here, resource consumption of resource is much less. and it is little higher. Even this single virtual machine can run all this application. But the moment, like if you want to move this two application to this two virtual machine, it's kind of very difficult, right? So if that application environment was on a containerized platform, then it would look like this. On top of hostess, there will be a Docker engine or a container runtime, and it can easily move the application. Like the container, a container is something which has the application files and dependencies built into it, so it is highly portable. You can just move it as it is. That container image itself you can just move. But in this case, you cannot move this app to this virtual machine unless we have all the dependencies installed in this virtual machine. That's a challenge. There is a challenge in perspective of operations. A need for containerizing an application, that also discuss consistent environment. So a containerized app will be consistent across the environment. Let's take we can deploy it in a laptop. It can be deployed onto a remote server in AWS or Azure or Google Cloud, any public cloud. It will be consistent across environment. We don't need to install any dependencies to for that container app to run. The only requirement will be a container runtime should be there. It can be Docker, Containerd, or CRI-O, anything. So it will run anywhere, and it will have the isolation, proper isolation. We also discussed yesterday an app, like if you want to deploy multiple application to a virtual machine, and if the application's versions is gonna get conflicted, like if the one application needs Java 5 runtime and the other application needs Java 6 runtime, it can't work. Those two applications cannot be deployed on a single virtual machine, right? So there we need isolation. But in Docker, in containers, when we create images, that can happen. Like we can just build an application container with Java 5 runtime and another application image with Java 6 runtime, and both can run on same VM with a Docker runtime. So in that way, isolation is there. Security and safety. We discussed about the namespaces and C groups on Linux kernel. How we isolate each container, like how the processes are not seeing each other. So things like that we discussed yesterday. Yeah, and standardization. So this also we discussed yesterday, how to build a Docker image. So basically, a small Node.js application over here, and the Docker file to build that Node.js application. So from Node 10 Alpine, which is a base image which we are gonna be used to build this application. Just copying this app.js file to app.js inside container, expose 3000 where the application is going to run, and command which is going to execute node app.js. We discussed on a Python application yesterday. So there are three approaches to containerize an application. Like if someone is already running their application on virtualized environment, if they want to migrate their application to a containerized platform, then they can quickly do that by rehosting it. We can do a lift and shift migration. We can just containerize their application by building an image and migrate that to any container platform. That's a quick thing which we can do. But if we do that, it won't get like all the advantages of a containerized application. It will be still a heavy application running on container platform. If you want to make it more lightweight, then we may have to do some sort of refactoring and all the stuffs. So refactoring is the second thing. Maybe part of the application we can migrate. Part of the application we can take and containerize it. We can build an image and run it on containerized application. So by part, we will refactor the entire application and run it as microservices on the containerized platform. Replace, we'll do heavy re-engineering on the actual application so that it will get all the advantages of container environment. So here come container orchestration. So I just started why we might need Kubernetes yesterday. So it's basically for managing containers at large scale. Let's say like for managing 10 to 20 containers, or managing 10 to 20 containers, we might not require any orchestration tool. It is kind of easy, anyone can do that manually, right? But when it is going to scale, like for Netflix or people like in, like people like managing streaming platforms or retail applications, anytime they will need to manage thousands to 10,000s fleet of containers in real time. So that is kind of very difficult to the management, to the operations team to manage the life cycle of every container. So basically, they needed an orchestrator, a tool which can automate most of the task to run this many containers. To manage containers running on a single host, single node, it is easy. But if you need to manage containers running across multiple nodes, let's say like in 100 nodes, we have around thousands of containers running. To manage that much scaled environment, it is not possible without an orchestrator. So that's where Kubernetes fit in, and we have other set of container orchestration tools. Docker Swarm is one of them, and Mesosphere is there, and we have Portainer also is there. So there are some other tools also, but Kubernetes is the one which we use widely, and it has more community support, and it's the number one project on GitHub, open source project on GitHub. Many clients have interesting success stories with Kubernetes. So that's a need of container orchestration. You can see some challenging areas. I noted down movement of containers from one host to another if there's a shortage of resources in a host, or if a host dies. So let's say my application container is running on a host on a VM, and that VM got died, like that host, physical host went down because of some RAM issues or CPU failure issues. And if I need to rehost that to a different VM, that I have to do manually, right? But if there is something called Kubernetes or some other tools, it is kind of really easy. Allocation of resources between containers. So these containers, we can restrict the resource utilization to containers. Like on a single node, we can host multiple containers, and we can really restrict. We need to restrict the CPU or memory request by the container. That we can only do with container orchestrator. Then managing the networking part, that is also a very difficult thing if we are not doing, if you are not using any container orchestrator. Basically, exposing services, exposing application outside, exposing applications to internet, and managing its life cycle. Everything can be more easy if you have a container orchestration tool. Then load balancing service discovery between containers like DNS mapping and all those stuffs. We can do that, all the stuffs we can do that, but for doing all these stuffs we have to do heavy engineering, like we have to do heavy scripting and all the stuffs. But this container orchestration tool like Kubernetes that make everything ready made available. Then health monitoring, configuration of an application, integration with to the containers running it. Yeah, for managing the configuration of an application. Yeah, we have config maps in Kubernetes. So I will explain those concepts later. So Docker Swarm with Kubernetes. Docker Swarm actually started as a project which can manage multiple containers, multiple fleet of containers. Initially, they were not able using Docker Swarm. We were not able to manage containers across virtual machines or multiple nodes. But later, they have now support for managing that. But somehow Kubernetes is number one in community, and everyone is adopting it. Uh, I will show I will show some statistics on Kubernetes. So if you look at GitHub, Kubernetes projects in GitHub, it have around 150,000 commits, 24,000 contributors. Number one GitHub project. Kubernetes started as a project internally by Google, and then they donated that to open source, and everyone started using it. So so it is really popular, and many of the big companies are using Kubernetes. They have really good success stories with Kubernetes. So let's start with some basic concepts of Kubernetes, like what all things are there in a Kubernetes cluster. Just we will look at it really quickly. So in Kubernetes cluster, there will be master nodes and worker nodes. The center one is the master node, and the other three is the three other worker nodes. So in each worker node, there will be container runtime and a kubelet running. Kubelet is kind of an agent which listen to the master. So we'll be interacting with master to control the containers. Like if I want to deploy an application, I will be talking directly to the master. So we won't be talking directly to each of the nodes. I will be just talking directly to the master, and then the master communicate with the kubelet, and then kubelet will be deploying the application to the available node. So on each of these nodes, a container runtime should be installed. In this case, I have put Docker. So this is a very basic Kubernetes architecture, cluster architecture. Okay, now inside Kubernetes, like when I say application, not inside Kubernetes, for an application deployment. So we were discussing about the struggles we had. Uh, we had to deploy an application. So how Kubernetes look at that application deployment? I will tell you about that. So pod is a basic object in Kubernetes. So inside the pod, containers will be running. So you can tell the pod like it's all declarative. We have to write a YAML, a manifest regarding the properties of the pod. So you can give pod a name, and you can tell them like how many of the containers should be running, and what should be the container image, like from where the container image should be pulled. So such kind of information we can give in the pod definition. Like we have to create a YAML file, pod manifest file, that I will show you. And once we have created that manifest file, we can just create the pod object. So uh, like we just need to run a command line. Like we have a CLI tool called kubectl. Like we saw Docker CLI tool for Docker yesterday. So we have kubectl CLI tool to create all these objects. So pod is something which can have like pod is the one thing which we deploy our containers into. Like in pod manifest, we will just write down the instruction, like, or in pod manifest, we will give that pod a name. We will tell what image it should use and which pod it should be listening. Those things we will write down in pod manifest. And service, if you need to expose this pod, like we already written down inside the pod manifest in which port it should be listening, and if that port needs to be exposed to be used by other pods, or if we need to expose it to outside the cluster so that we can go to the browser and access it, we need to create a service object. Services are of three types: cluster, node port, and load balancer. Cluster service is used to expose the application within the cluster itself. Node port service is used to expose the application um, inside, like application using the part of the node itself. So if you look at, we have three marker nodes here in this image. So that application will be listening to this host machine or nodes port. So maybe if you have another system running on the same subnet, and if you have access to that machine, and if you know the private IP of this system, you can just check in the browser with the private IP and that node port. You'll be able to access that application. So that's service. Then volume you can make use of cloud volumes. Like from AWS you can make use of elastic block storage. From Amazon, from Azure you can use Azure disk as volumes. So there are persistent volumes and non-persistent volumes. If you want to use persistent volumes, then either you should have a storage service running in your environment, say for Gluster FS or something like that should be there. So volume is basically if multiple pods are pods needs to have same volume, or if you need to store data, then you should create this volume object. And here comes namespace. Namespace is kind of a folder name. We all have multiple folders, like we all keep our files inside folders, right? So namespace is similar. If you have a deployment, if you have multiple deployment, and you can create multiple namespaces and create this pod service and volume, all this object inside that namespace, different namespace, different namespace.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Cheta, could you just check the presentation? I think it's showing some error, that's why, for
That's it.
us.
One second.
It's like the presentation is like it's not showing up. It only the audio channel is actually coming up. Right?
So in case we are not able to see my slides, right?
Yeah, we are able to see, but for every one of us, it's like it is going to one corner. Like the main screen is not coming up.
So okay, it's not, you guys are not
If
able
you
to see.
stop the presentation and just start it again
Okay, I will try that.
in sharing.
Yeah. How long it was like that?
Just like last 2 3 minutes. That's it.
Okay. What about
Yeah.
now?
Now it's working properly.
Okay, cool.
Now we
Yeah.
okay.
Okay. So that's all about volume, persistent volume and non-persistent volume. Persistent volume is something which we need, like even if the pod dies, the volume should not go. Like the pod can be recreated later, right? So when the pod is gonna recreate later, it should be attached to the same volume which it was using, so that the data will not be lost. That is called persistent volume, and non-persistent volumes are volumes which it will also go off. Like data will be lost once the pod got restarted or something like that. That is non-persistent volume. Yeah, and yeah, sorry, I was talking about namespace. So namespace is similar to your folders. Like when we have a deployment or multiple deployments, we can group it under namespace. And if you need to restrict access based on usernames or something like that, like if a team A is developing this application, you can create a namespace for the team A and let them access. We can give access to team A for to only that namespace. And if team B is creating something, and if you need to restrict access, like if team A should not interfere with team B's activity, you can create a namespace and give permissions for deployments to that namespace to team B only. So that's the concept of namespace. These are the basic Kubernetes objects. So it has some higher level abstractions like deployment, daemon set, stateful set, a replica set, and job. So I'll tell what deployment is. So as I said, a pod can have multiple containers, and we can write how many replicas it should have, things like that. We can write to manage a deployment. To manage a pod, you can write deployment. Yeah. So basically, a deployment is written to manage the state of a pod. Like if I have to restart when the pod got crashed, that you can specify in deployment manifest. So everything in Kubernetes is a manifest file. If you have to create a pod, you have to write a manifest file. Service, you have to write a manifest file. Same for volume, namespace, deployments, daemon set, stateful set, replica set, job, everything. So in deployment, we can specify the number of pods should be running, and liveness readiness checks we can specify, like when the pod is live and when the uh, pod is ready to serve request. Those things we can specify in deployment manifest. And daemon set is something which we use actually which we use for logging purposes. So a daemon set is similar to deployment, but whatever we specified in the daemon set manifest, a pod will be running on all the nodes. If you create a deployment with the two pods, two replicas, then the pods will be running in, maybe running in one pod here, one pod here, or one pod here, one pod here. That's how deployment should be. If you create a daemon set for an application, that will be running on all the nodes. That pod, that application will be running as a pod in all the worker nodes. So the use case I was telling, daemon set are mostly used for collecting logs of containers and worker nodes. So it will be a daemon set that container that application which is running as daemon set will be deployed onto all these three worker nodes and mounted to var log directory or var lib docker slash log directory and collect tail all the logs and be sending to a centralized log collector. So daemon set is basically used for most of the use cases are monitoring purposes of this Kubernetes cluster and worker nodes and the workloads. Sorry. Stateful set are also similar to deployment. So in deployment, if I set two pod, it will be on either of these three nodes. So initially it can be on this pod and this node and this node. Later, when this pod get crashed, it can relaunch on this node. So there is no proper mapping in between all this. it can relaunch anywhere in on any worker node, right? But in stateful set, it will be relaunched to the same worker node. So this is mostly we will be using for stateful application. There are two type of applications: stateless and stateful application. Stateful applications are applications where we need to manage the session of the user. So a session of the user and the applications like DB and all these things we need to deploy as stateful. Basically, basically like when I said the concept of volume, that volume will be attached to this particular node when we create a volume. And if it needs to, if the pod die and if it is gonna um, get created on this node, the volume will not be attached to that, and the data that statefulness will be lost. Instead, if it was relaunched on the same node, it could have looked at the older data. It could have got the older data thing, right? So in that way, that stateful application remains stateful. The data is not lost. So that is basically stateful set. And replica set, it controls the number of replicas running in each deployment. And job is similar to cron job. Like if you want to run a job in every 30 minutes or every day, like a scheduled jobs at this particular point of time, this container should spin up and do this activity and get destroyed. If you want to do things like that, you can make use of jobs. So this is what I explained. uh, this is very simple pod. It only have one container. It have a container and volume attached. It have two container and one single volume attached. It have three containers and two volumes attached. Each of the pod will have its IP address and service. Service, if you look here, it's a pod, and this pod have an IP. And when we create a service, it will also that service will get an IP, and this IP and pod will be mapped to the pod IP. Yeah, yeah. Just look at this image only. It's more easier, I guess. Now comes to volume. So basically, each pod can mount multiple volumes from multiple cloud provider or from the physical host itself, from the worker node itself. If you want to mount a directory, local directory, that you can do. So namespaces I explained. So namespace 1 and namespace 2. Here the pod name is awesome app 1, and in namespace 2 also awesome app 1. So if you are going to create two pods with the same name, awesome app 1, in single namespace, it will throw error. But instead you can create multiple namespaces and have same name for the pods or deployments or services or anything. And also you can restrict the user access to each namespace. This is pretty big architecture if you look at, but I will try to explain it as best as I can, as much as simple as I can. So Kubernetes control plane, API server, controller manager, scheduler. So this is the master node. Kubernetes control in the sense it's a connection coming from outside the internet talking to API server. It can be kubectl command which we executed on our CLI. It comes to the API server and it have a controller manager, scheduler, etcd. These are the components inside a master node. So API server is the one who stand middle in between, like from kubectl or Kubernetes dashboard. The calls are coming to API server to perform some actions, and it will just map. It will just take that request to either controller manager or scheduler or to the worker node to kubelet. Like if you're gonna deploy a pod kubectl run nginx, then it will be just going to the scheduler. That entry will be there, like we need to schedule this nginx pod to an available node, worker node. So it will just look at the scheduler, and then it will be talking with the kubelet to know like which node is more available, like with perspective of computational resources, and identify, and it will just identify that worker node and deploy that pod. That is what scheduler will do. And controller manager is the one who do the replication and the namespace mapping, service account creation, etc. That all things this control manager will do. And the configuration, the server configurations, the cluster configurations will be stored onto etcd. So basically, if we are adding a new worker node, that configurations will be added to this etcd. That configurations will be managed by this etcd service. So when we have to take backup of a Kubernetes cluster, it's very important to keep backup of etcd configuration files and everything. Yeah, that's all about this architecture. So if you look at the worker node, we have kubelet and kubeproxy. So kubeproxy is the one who manage the network between pods, also network coming from internet. So kubelet is the one who listens, and like if an pod got crashed, it will just report here and then rebuild it again, things like that. The kubelet will be doing. And here you can see docker runtime. Just we need to have a container runtime. It can be docker, containerd, or cryo. So similarly this worker now. Hope that was not that difficult. Kubernetes on its own is not enough because we need to monitor it. Then we should have a container registry. We need to have proper controls on who are gonna access my Kubernetes cluster. So identity airbag controls should be there. So there are a lot of things. Like if you have Kubernetes, it cannot stand alone. You should have a couple of other tools as well. Yeah. So yeah, that's it. That's pretty much on that hands-on. I misspelled it. Hands-on. So let's do some quick hands-on, and yeah, I will try to explain little more concepts from the documentation. So far, how is it like? What do you think? Any suggestions or any questions so far? Let me quickly look at the chat. So basically, we don't have any queries yet. So I'm just continuing. So this is the official Kubernetes documentation. I will go through this documentation for executing this example and all. So you can just go back and look, read more on this from the documentation itself and understand it better at your own pace and your own time. So first thing, what you need is a Minikube, which is a smaller version of Kubernetes cluster. on your laptop itself. It's very easy to install. If you're running Linux, you just do this run this command, and then you can install it on Linux by just following these instructions. Yeah. So here are commands for macOS, Windows. You can just switch it like this. Yeah. So this is how you can set it up on your laptop, a small cluster for your experiments. Yeah. So I have already installed my Minikube. Minikube. So my Minikube is running. Minikube cluster is running. If I do kubectl get nodes. So kubectl also you need to install after installing Minikube. kubectl CLI you can just I'll show you. After installing Minikube, you can install kubectl by going through the same documentation. Here also it have a good decent documentation for how to install kubectl. So just follow this documentation. If you guys got encountered any issues, you guys can come back to me anytime. And also if you guys should read on this basic concepts, like what is Kubernetes. This is what I explained from yesterday: traditional deployment, virtualized container deployment, why you need Kubernetes and what it can do, what Kubernetes is not, things like that, right? So you guys should go through this documentation for sure. Yeah. Okay, so I will just do this exercise with you. So basically this is going to deploy a guestbook application with Redis database. Redis is a cache uh, cache cache database, as very small lightweight database which can cache the frequent queries. So basically I'm in this example they are using Redis as the backend for the guestbook application. So first, yeah, you can either, yeah, one more thing is there, you can either use Katacoda or play with Kubernetes. Yesterday, start scenario. So you will get something like this. Kubernetes starter, kubectl cluster info. Yeah. So here you will get a Kubernetes cluster online. You can do your experiments on Katacoda playground, Kubernetes playground as well. And the other thing is play with Kubernetes. It's also very interesting. Like you'll have a 4-hour session. You can add an instance. You can add another instance, right? If you want, you can add another instance also. So you'll have 3 instances available for 4 hours. So yesterday I told you guys to try out Kubernetes the hard way by Kelsey Hightower. That you can simply try out with these 3 nodes. It's free. The only thing is it will get destroyed after 4 hours, but you can learn from scratch for free using by using these 3 nodes. You can make one node as master and other nodes as worker nodes. Yeah. So I was telling you guys everything in Kubernetes is a YAML file, YAML manifest, right? So here if you look at kind deployment, in metadata we have given the name Redis master for the, this is the deployment name, and I labeled this deployment with key app and value Redis, and selector match labels app Redis. It should be like this only, and role like this value and this value should be same. Then replicas, it is one here. You can have multiple replicas if that is required by the application. Then here goes the container specification, name, master, then image repo from where the image should be pulled, that is given over here. Then I said earlier, like each container, each pod running in Kubernetes, or each container can have uh, this boundaries. It can only request 100 M of CPU and memory, 100 MA of memory. Then the application will be running on container port 6379. So all these things are declarative. Whenever we do this, whenever we do an apply or create, whenever we apply this manifest, it is going to create a deployment. Um, in it is going to create a deployment inside your cluster. So I'm just gonna deploy it using this command. I can have this file locally also, like if I go to this link, it downloaded me that Redis master YAML file. So first of all, let's just look at like whether we have any deployments running. kubectl get deploy will get you all the deployments which are running on the cluster. Right now there are no resources running in the default namespace. So let's look at how many namespaces are there. kubectl get ns will give you the namespaces. We have default kube node lease, kube public, kube system. So kube node, kube public, kube systems are the default namespaces which will be created by Minikube itself. And default namespace is the namespace in which we are going to deploy our application. So I'm going to create Redis master kubectl create -f create deployment -f. -f flag is used to create from file. Like when we have this manifest on a file, we have to use this flag. kubectl deploy unknown flag, I guess. Okay, that deployment is not required over there. Deployment, like what is the manifest? In the manifest itself, we have given the kind as deployment, so it will automatically read it from the manifest file. So basically, it is already there, so we don't need to do like when creating a deployment from file, we don't need to pass that command like kubectl create deployment. Deployment is not required. kubectl create -f, then deployment YAML file. So it says the deployment got created. So let's look. Yeah, Redis master is up and running. So here we have given replicas 1, right? So 1 out of 1 is there. So if you look kubectl get pods, so Redis master 1 pod is running. I'm gonna do something weird here. kubectl delete pod. So this is how we can delete the objects from a Kubernetes cluster. Kubernetes environment. So I'm going to delete the pod which is managed by the deployment Redis master. So let's see what it does. So it got deleted. You can see within seconds it's spawn up another pod. The deployment, it is actually looking at whether the pod is running or not. One out of one pods are there or not in running state, and if it is not there, it will just spin up another one. So if I'm going to delete that deployment, kubectl delete uh, deployment redis hyphen master and do kubectl get ports. It is gonna it's terminating its ports and everything is gone. Right. So let's continue with the demo, the example app deployment. So I just recreated the Redis master. Yeah, and the other command kubectl logs minus f. If you want to see the logs which are printed inside this pod, you can use kubectl logs command minus a minus f if you want to tail it and the pod name. So this is the logs which are printed inside that particular container. So now we are going to create a service. Yeah. So here the application Redis master will be running on 6379 of the container pod, and we need to expose that inside the cluster so that our front end application will be able to call it. Right now, no one can um, no one can call this particular pod. No one can communicate with this pod. So we are going to create a service, and once the service is created, that pod is available within the cluster. So for that, I'm just applying this command. It's also applied from file kubectl apply minus -f. Service got created. kubectl get svc. You can see Redis master got created as a cluster IP service. So this Redis master will be called can be called by Kubernetes node or something like whatever. If any other pods which are running in the cluster, it can call this service on this IP. No one from outside will be able to call communicate with this IP. This Kubernetes service is created by Minikube, like it will be there by default. So now we are going to create slave applications, slave Redis applications. Okay. Redis master is there, Redis slave is there. You can see the number of slaves are 2. Replicas, because it was given replicas 2, so number of uh, slave is 2 here. Yeah, if I do kubectl get pods, it will have 3 pods running. Yeah, Redis slave managed by this Redis slave deployment. So now we have to create a service for the slaves. So the service got created for slaves. Yeah. So this is the guestbook front-end application deployment. Here replica count is 3, and container frame we have given PHP Redis, and image which is gonna pull we have given the repo URL, and CPU request and memory also we have given here. So yeah, principal get pods. Yeah, front-end application 3 replicas are running right away.
Hello, Vishnu,
Yes.
you break in between.
Okay.
Hello,
Hello.
Vishnu, sound
Yes.
is breaking.
Uh, 1 second. How is it now? Hello. Hello, Dagesh. Hello. Is it better now? Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, person, can you hear me? Is
Yeah.
it better?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Okay, cool. Then fine. I just connected to my mobile hotspot. Maybe my Wi-Fi got lost. So the front-end application and the backend Redis master slaves are running. Yeah. Okay. Then we have to create a service for the front end. We, is it? Yeah. So here, if you look, sorry, here if you look at this this service is gonna run as a node port instead of cluster IP because we need to access it, right? We need to access the front end application on our laptop. So we are given node port. If it was deployed on any cloud provider, it should have been an external. It should have been of type load balancer, which will create an external load balancer for your application to get communication or get traffic from internet. So here it is not put. So from my home network, anyone will be able to access that application. If I access it from my mobile, if it is connected to the same network, then I will be able to access it. So get SVC not port. So here not port, right? So this is the minikube command to get the URL of that notepod service. So if I go to my browser, so I'm able to access that application, right? So yeah, here you can create load balancer only if you are using any cloud provider. Otherwise, you will not get the external IP. It will show pending status for long. Yeah, you can scale the application on fly by adding more replicas by this command by using dash dash replicas command. So if you do kubectl get pods, there will be 5 replicas of this front end running. kubectl get deploy, deployments, 5 instances of 5 pods of front end application is running. Then you can scale down. You can scale down to 2. Now it is 2, right? Okay. So that's all about the demo. Like once you have completed like building this application and done with all your experiments, you can delete the deployments and services using this command. So app equal to redis is the label selector dash l. App equal to redis. This redis masters and slaves have app equal to redis keys. So it will select the deployment which needs to be deleted based on the labels which we applied while we created those deployment. So for the front end application, app equal to guest book was given, so we can use that label to delete that deployments. We don't need to delete the deployments one by one, right? We can just delete using this label. So master and slave deployment will get deleted. So yeah, I guess that's it for today's session. So what do you guys think? Any doubts? And I will show you one more thing, like for beginners, as you guys are mostly from from college. So if you check Julia Evans Science, then you can get a lot of this type of representations or learning materials for Kubernetes containers and all the stuff. Right? Why containers? Then what's a container? You guys like if you go to her site, it is kind of you might have to buy it, but this is available for free in internet. Yeah, so you can download it from somewhere, but it would be very helpful. It's more easy to understand. Yeah. So I guess There are no doubts yet.
Okay. Hello. Hello.
Yes, Rakesh.
Yes, I'm guessing there are no more questions. Is there? Oh, no. Okay. So, Vishnu, we apologize for the low count. Majority of the participants have their online internals this week. That's right.
So shall we wind up?
Yeah. So, thank you for giving us an overview about Docker and Kubernetes, and also for recommending some resources.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. We end up the session then.
Okay. Okay, Rakesh. Bye. Thanks. Thanks.